clown school.
Well,
You
yeah.
learn how to do the pie slap.
So why don't we get started? Hey, welcome, Ralph, Twyla, Kathleen. I see you've been on for a while. Christina, thank you for coming. Um, so for the benefit of our recording, this is PISLAP Community Call, and it is the 28th of May. And our guest conversation starter is RT Ryback. I'll be introducing him in general in a few minutes. But I wanted to introduce also Bruce Peterson, who he and I together have been thinking through a lot of things together. We're going to be here for the next 75 minutes. We're going to be recording as we are now, so that it'll be available to people who aren't on the call. And kind of the general flow of things is after Bruce speaks, we're going to be doing a very brief, what we call grounding to try and center ourselves. Then a very brief update on PISLAP. Some of you may or may not be members, and if you are, there's some really interesting things you ought to know about what we're up to here. Um, and then we'd like to have a short introduction of everyone, and I mean short, our name and where our feet touch the ground, or where we live. And then I'm going to introduce our tea, and then we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to ask you to put your questions, your comments in the chat, and then we're going to call out. So it's going to be a kind of fluid conversation. RT really likes that rather than just, him having a canned speech, which he doesn't do in my estimation. So that's what we're going to be doing. And so without further ado, Bruce, I want to
Well,
introduce you and have you be a part of this. He's 20 years of being with PISLAP. I've been 3 years, and by the way, I am not a lawyer. Bruce is.
all I wanted to say, just to give some context, is that I've been a Minneapolis resident for 40 years and a PISLAP member for 20 years, and I have never seen in my experience a confluence of the intersection of law, spirituality, and politics that occurred here last winter with the spontaneous outpouring of love and support and affection that occurred almost miraculously. And we want to hear from our team more about that, but it just, things came together in a way I've never seen before. And because that was such an example of what we are promoting, we're going to devote our fall retreat here to studying the Minneapolis resistance, to meeting with local leaders, to try to see how it can be expanded upon and used elsewhere. And we have Craig's going to talk more about RT, but we have the perfect person here to start talking about that with us, because we have a man here who's been deeply involved in Minnesota, probably as long or in Minneapolis, as long or longer than I have, and was very involved in the Minneapolis resistance. So this is just a great a focus for us at this point. We're glad you're here.
Thanks, Bruce. So a little bit of update on PISLAP. Some of you don't know, and if you do know, Peter Gable, as the founder and kind of the spiritual head of PISLAP for many, many years, passed away a few years ago, but left a very, very rich archive. And so what we're doing right now is bringing together, assembling Peter's published and unpublished writings to be housed in a way that's accessible for searching, both using his name and what we call keywords. So a very accessible archive of Peter's published and unpublished writings. Also, we're going to be creating a reader. The reader is envisioned as a project to bring together a curated and accessible introduction to the writings, teachings, and enduring influence of Peter and others, I might say, as well. Peter wasn't all a PISLAP. There are many, many members, and many of you here. I see Nanette Shore and Perry both on this call. Nanette is one of the co-founders, along with Peter, of PISLAP. So I just want to do a call out to you, Nanette. And then
Thank you.
finally, an institute. So using the archive and the reader, we want to create an intellectual foundation, potential institute for the integration of spirituality, law, and politics, kind of a living center of teaching and scholarship and community rooted in the vision. So that's what we're up to. We've got a host of people doing that. We've created, we have a very active collaboration of members to bring that forward. So that's great. So let's go around. Around the circle. I'm going to refer to circle. Yeah, we're on squares, and here we are on Zoom again, right? But let's think of we're in a circle because we can see each other, we can hear each other. There's equality built into the circle, and so I'm going to call out your name and just introduce yourself. Say your name. Um, Maybe if you're a PISLAP member, maybe say that. And then where are you located? Very briefly, 10 seconds or so. So I'm going to ask you to go, Sylvia.
I'm
Yeah,
Sylvia
take
Clute.
everybody off mute. Yeah, great.
Pardon me. I'm Sylvia Clute in Richmond, Virginia, and I have been a PISLAP member for many, many years.
And you're a lawyer in Richmond?
I'm a recovering attorney. Yes, working on unitive justice, which is justice as love.
Great.
That's a good thing to do to recover from being in the gladiator pit.
Thank you. Kathleen, and add what you're doing as well, very briefly. Thank you. Kathleen, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm sitting outside a courthouse, so I'm mostly muted because of noise. But there's not any noise for this next 3 minutes, I can tell you. I'm in Northern California. I'm a lawyer. I've been a member of PISLAP for years. I think I'm still a current member. I love what you're talking about doing in Minneapolis. I can't wait to get there. Thank you.
Great. And you're an active lawyer, Kathleen?
I am. Yes, I'm
sitting
81 years
outside a
old and
courthouse.
I'm 81 years old and I'm still practicing. Believe it or not.
Yay. Good. Ralph.
Yes, I am Ralph White. I'm in New York City. I'm not a lawyer, but I am somebody deeply connected to spirituality and politics, and I've been connected to PISLAP for a long time because I'm Nanette's partner. So that's me. Lovely to be here and see you all.
Also the founder of the Open Center in New York,
Correct.
a wonderful learning center. Brad.
Hi, great to be here. Brad Roth, I'm in New York City. I'm an attorney and I teach mindfulness and managing conflict as an adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and serve as director of education for the Open Future Institute's Question Project, which supports students in high school to explore questions relating to fundamental questions relating to our humanity, identity, purpose, meaning, etc. Great to be here.
Thank
And
you.
a member of PISLAP for a number of years now. Thank you.
Okay, Nanette. Are you there, Nanette? Great. I can see you moving. You're on mute.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone, and thank you, RT, for joining us today. Delighted and honored to have you. And thank you to Bruce and Craig for organizing. I'm Nanette Shore. I'm on the executive committee of PISLAP. I've been involved with PISLAP since its inception. And in terms of my work, I work at Bronx Legal Services, which is an organization representing low-income residents of the Bronx. And that's been my long time career and work. Thank you. And my apologies that I will need to very shortly leave, but I will be listening to the record.
Thank you. Lisa, you're on mute.
I am in Boston and I am a law professor at New England Law School, and I have been joining some of your calls. I'm not sure if I'm a member. I should probably be, but very much interested in finding ways to merge spirituality and law in my area of practice and teaching as human rights where it becomes relevant.
Thank you. Twyla,
Yes, can you hear me?
we can.
All right, great. I do not know why you can't see me, but anyway, I am in Austin and I'm not a lawyer, and I've been a long, long time PISLAP member. And what I'm about these days, I just came back from a great little vacation, and I am just trying to navigate the times and contribute what I can.
And you've been a great contributor, Twyla. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Perry, you're on mute. There we go.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can.
I am Perry Sedman. I've been a member of PISLAP for 30 years and almost since the beginning. I'm in Washington, D.C. at the moment. I'm driving to an appointment, so that's why you can't see me, because I'm in my car. I've been a patent attorney for many, many years. I like to refer to myself as the resident capitalist of PISLAP.
Perry is also on the executive committee. Christina, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Christina Loftus. I'm just west of the Twin Cities in Victoria, Minnesota. And yeah, so happy to be here. I'm a relatively new member of PISLAP, and I am a recovering attorney and now work as a psychotherapist specializing in serving those in the legal field or other professions, those seeking psychotherapy. Not everybody's seeking that. Yeah. But yeah, so happy to be here with you all.
Thank you. So Martha and Ray, you're coming in. We're introducing ourselves by our name, where we are, and very briefly, what do we do? And our PISLAP member. Ray, I'm going to call on you, and you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. It's nice to meet everybody. Ray Kramer. I'm in New York City. I've been on the mailing list for PISLAP for a long time. This is the first meeting I've joined, and happy to meet folks and to participate. I'm a long-serving administrative law judge for the city of New York. 10 years ago, I stepped out of the courtroom. We were able to launch as an initiative within our agency. It's the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings. We were able to launch our Center for Creative Conflict Resolution. Fast forward, as per an executive order, we're the city government's central resource for conflict resolution, restorative practices, and 9 of us, 7 service providers, provide a range of conflict services, including restorative practices, to the full city government workforce, and have helped create some outward-facing programs. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. Thank you so much. And Martha, you're on mute. There we go.
Hi. I am in Milford, Pennsylvania right now. I am a very long time colleague of Nanette's. I was at Brooklyn Legal Services for a long time, but my last work was with the Center for the Study of Social Policy, a DC think tank, for almost 20 years, and doing juvenile justice and child welfare policy work there. And lately, I've been very involved in the indivisible work that's happening in Pennsylvania. And I duck in and out of the PISA calls when I can.
Thank you. Great. So Bruce, if you want to say a little bit more about yourself, and you're on mute.
I said enough that I've been here a long time. I've been in PISLAP a long time. I'm a retired judge. I teach a course at the University of Minnesota Law School that I developed called Lawyers as Peacemakers, which sometimes makes people think for a minute. But I do some other things too. But PISLAP's been very important to me over the years as a source of inspiration and models for how I can improve my work and my life.
Great. Patricia. You're on mute.
Thanks. I'm Patricia Neal. I'm in Minneapolis, partnered with this guy in your upper left-hand corner. Uh, totally believe in the mission of PISLAP and am thrilled to be associated tangentially through Craig's work. I've spoken.
And I'll also say that Patricia's been executive director of Center for Purposeful Leadership for many, many years and is working with the Center for Collaborative Democracy. I'm Craig Neal, and I'm here in Minneapolis as we've been here for 35 years. And it's a wonderful place to live, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of this today and part of PISLAP. And so, great. Is there anyone that's come in? No, I think we're there. So, R.T. Ryback, way of introduction. R.T. and I were publishers together a long time ago. I mean, years and decades ago. And I remember going into RT's office, and I had a bone to pick with you, RT. At the time, your paper, your newspaper, had written a piece about the founder of Utne Reader, and I was publisher of Utne Reader at the time. And you handled me with such grace and diplomacy, I gotta say, because I was really a bit upset. So fast forward, our lives have intersected several times over that period of time. Was mayor of our great city for 12 years. And here's an image that really sticks with me. RT was launching a book at First Avenue, which Prince made famous, by the way, and lots of artists. And so he was launching, and then at the end, what he decided to do was leap into the crowd. Surf, literally. Whoa! Right into the crowd. I mean, what mayor would do that except a mayor who was really loved by the people? And I have to say, RT, you are loved by the people. And so I wanted to fast forward to kind of what we're here for, and that's, this theme called Moral Minnesota in an Immoral World. That's a strong statement. The Minneapolis response to ICE. Well, I was very involved. Actually, I had a little clip that went viral on NBC. But who was involved? There were no leaders, and I think RT will say this too. It was highly decentralized response, and that's what made us so unique. But one of the things that I remember is watching this guy RT show up at least a half a dozen events I was at. Not so much as a leader or speaker or somebody, wanting the podium, but somebody who's handing out leaflets and encouraging people and saying, let's go, this is important, folks. And so, RT, I've never had an opportunity to say this, but you are really loved and really admired within our city. And after he was mayor, in my estimation, could have gone on to higher office here in the state and perhaps nationally, but decided to stay local. Born and raised right here in Minneapolis, a commitment to this place. And so it's with a lot of respect I want to introduce you, RT. And the question that I might
just froze when you were saying nice things about me.
Well, you can.
I missed it, but that's
so maybe give us an arc. These are folks that are here because we all are trying to look at integrating spirituality, law, and politics. Now, there's an arc of your life, maybe your profession, maybe your life. Maybe share a little bit of that might be germane to that. And then maybe we move into really what happened here between December and April. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks. I mean, what an amazing group of people. I didn't know about this till I got the invitation, and wow. It sounds like a hell of a dinner party, by the way, but really appreciate being here. So I know you want to hear about the response, and I want to get to that. And your question was, I think, kind of what got up to that. I think there's a connection between the two in the idea of being of a place that is collective and interdependent with huge gaps. And so let me sort of put my own narrative within that and try to do it short. I grew up in a very middle class neighborhood. My parents had a corner drugstore, and when my father had a heart attack and died when I was a kid, so my mother ran the drugstore. And during that time, uh, I had a scholarship to go to a very good private prep school here. I tell all that because at a very young age, I got a window into what I would now call my continuum of privilege. I would wake up in a middle class neighborhood. I'd go to school with people with dramatically more money than us. And then after my dad died, we'd go down to the drugstore at Chicago and Franklin, which was the center of the Native community here. And right when AIM was starting, and there was great activism and poverty and all of that. So basically, and then when the drugstore would close at night, we delivered prescriptions around the neighborhood. And I remember very specifically walking up to the front door of a place. You know, we were in the car, I got out, I walked the prescription up the front door, looked into a house, saw a kid my age, and I still know where that house is on Park Avenue and 26th and 25th, and still know that I felt at that moment there was something deeply wrong. That kid's life and my life were really different. And um, in all of its wonderfulness in the community I grew up in, there is a huge gap between haves and have-nots. That's been the central defining part of my work. As a reporter, I've had 12 different careers. I won't go through all of them, but as a reporter, it was absolutely about that. It as when I published the Alternative Weekly that we talked about, it was very much about trying to do that. When I was mayor, it was that. When I ran an education equity table, it was that. And when I now in my job that I've had for 10 years running the Minneapolis Foundation, it's very much about that. And I say that context because what you saw during the ice surge was absolutely spontaneous collective action. And there was some backbone to it as well. The spontaneous action was really about people who had a kid at a child care center and loved a worker there who was threatened. So they would pick that worker up in the morning. They would stand outside in the freezing cold and protect the door from ice. It was people who knew someone who worked in the kitchen in a restaurant and did the same. It was a lot of spontaneity, and there was some structure to it. One of which was foundations like ours funded a lot of training for constitutional observers. 35,000 people were trained. Um, we became very involved very early in funding a lot of the grassroots food delivery networks that came up. Then there were other places where collection took place, coffee shops. Because I think there would be a really interesting book in it comparing the cafes of Resistance France to the coffee shops in Minneapolis during the surge. You would walk into the corner coffee shop, and in one corner is a huge pile of children's diapers and other things. The food delivery groups are coming to deliver all of the food. The people over in the corner are wearing the yellow vests because they were part of the neighborhood signal chat. Indivisible, someone mentioned, I think Martha, you mentioned, was central to a lot of that work. There was also something else and I'll wrap this up, but I want to kind of tie all this together. Something else that was an echo of an incident before, incident is the wrong word. When George Floyd was murdered, a lot took place and a lot went wrong in this community. But two big things happened. Number one, there got to be an initiative that now is mobilizing a few $1 billion of capital to go into addressing the inequities in Black home ownership and businesses. I'll get to that in a second. But the other very unofficial thing that happened is that a lot of folks who didn't have confidence in policing really started to rally in very unofficial networks around the idea of we keep each other safe. And these very unofficial networks also became part of the backbone on that. So fast forward, could I run with this for 2 more minutes? I didn't want to do a
No,
monologue.
keep going. I'll come in if
because one
you're
thing's
go-
kind of connecting to another, and I wanted to tie all the dot.
You're
So
good.
fast forward to Renee Good is murdered, and I raced to the scene. And what was going through my mind there was what happened after George Floyd was murdered. And our foundation raised and delivered $60 million of funding to small businesses to help repair all of the damage. And I'm thinking the city's about to explode. But unlike after George Floyd's murder, when we got to the scene there was a quasi structure. There were people who had been trained as constitutional observers playing a role there and focusing folks. There were some people yelling at the police, but actually the police were kind of maybe sort of on our side. But so saying go, focus it on ICE. That night, the observers and all that structure, everybody went home. And so now it's like 9 o'clock at night, and a progressive state senator and a progressive council member and I were in contact, and they said, go to Lake and Bloom, I can't remember the cross section. And there I saw a very different scene. It was like the scene after George Floyd's murder. It was very random, and there was no sort of structure to it. So we got on the phone and called some people. Others did too. But what didn't happen that night was super important. And it didn't happen because we lived through that other, and because there were these networks and a lot of things. And so I think we've learned.
Can I intercede here?
Yeah,
for a
please,
second?
because just
good.
take it wherever you want to go.
So there's an arc here that I think is really important. George Floyd, murder of Melissa Hortman, and the Annunciation murders. Everybody knows about those, right? What do you see? What happened in our community around that may have led I'm baiting this, but
yeah. Well, let me just take George Floyd's murder and the ICE surge first and just say one was a war within this community, one was a war against the common enemy. And I use the term war really advisedly because it wasn't exactly that, but the rage needs to be communicated. There are people who communicate this as, gee, these horrible things were done to the city and they just got together and everything was great. It wasn't. There was phenomenal outpouring of compassion and community and all of that. But there was and remains deep rage at what was done. And so there's sort of this narrative that's set in that all this happened because Minnesotans are kind people who push strangers out of a snowbank in the winter. That is true. And there was structure to some of it, and it was not a cutesy little thing. This city was attacked by the federal government. I mean, the shocking realization of that needs to be colored. So I think that's a piece of it. In the case of George Floyd's murder, you were looking across the street at somebody who you may have blamed for that. We were looking across the street during the ICE surge at people who came into this community. And by the way, we didn't know who was an ICE person and who was a Boogaloo boy who was coming in here too. So that's the
Exactly.
sharpest I can get.
And again, let me go back to the murder of Melissa Hortman, who was
Yeah.
the speaker at the time, and then the Annunciation murders. There was a something happened in both cases, and these were recent. This is not
Yeah.
decades. This, do you have anything that you might correlate to what happened
Well,
within the city?
yeah, um, our beloved city is carrying an enormous amount of trauma. And, one of the things that I did as mayor is I very quickly realized I was over my head, and the only thing I could do was to show up, be imperfect, but show up. So I went everywhere. And I recognized much later how much trauma that meant, like every night at murder scenes, at mass murder, and all of that. So I went through some EMDR therapy and all of that, and I still have a long way to go. I carry a lot with me. I only put that into the conversation because I'm now seeing that on a community level. The collective trauma is extraordinary. What shoe drops next? And then in the middle of that is the most wonderful collective outpouring of compassion ever. So we are traumatized and in it together. And I don't know how to reconcile all that. I would much rather be traumatized with people than solely. My own journey in getting at my own personal trauma that I carry has been a singular one. The community now is doing that. So it allows us to begin to look at things like look in the eye of the collective trauma of kids walking into a classroom. We just put a $500,000 into a program called Stable Homes, Stable Schools. That's about seeing the kids who are walking into schools without knowing where they're going to be tonight and having the capacity within the school district to identify housing for them. That's one trauma they have. But also within that are kids who are coming there whose parents were ripped out. How do you explain this to a kid? So I think unfortunately the answer to it is there's an awful lot that is collectively being carried that can't be dissected into here's how I feel about the surge or George Floyd's murder or Melissa's murder. I can hardly even talk about that. Um, there's just a hell of a lot being carried, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, this collective trauma is really clear. And it's interesting, in my estimation, how that gets communicated. I mean, what you said is one of the responses was this deep caring, this deep response. Part of the integration of spirituality, law, a lot of lawyers here, and politics, this bringing this together, what I noticed a lot were the churches. So when we think of spirituality, we think of, okay, our spiritual beliefs and how they, what did you notice in all of this expression during the resistance? And I also want to bring up singing resistance because I think
Yeah.
you might have been there at the Westminster when that amazing
I was
event
at a
happened.
few things, but I can't see the chat. It just flashes up. But somebody just said, don't focus on the trauma, and I'm interested in that perspective. Did I read that right? It just flashed across my screen. Would you mind, would you share what you were just saying?
That's Stu. Stu, what did you mean, Stu?
What?
Stu, you're the
Yeah.
one who said don't focus on the trauma. And could you share what you mean by that? RT wanted to
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Stu
My
Webb
my
is a
study is
longtime member of PISLAP. And thank you, Stu. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
my work starts with collaborative law, which is dealing with conflict, particularly among couples of that time. But what I learned is that love dissolves conflict, and the love that shows up in this whole thing. You don't focus on the trauma. You focus on the love that cures trauma. And
It-
so we work with conflict. The people who like RT is coming from his heart. These people are coming from their heart, and that is what's showing up. If we keep talking about the problem, we get taken away from our feelings. Staying centered with the love that we are is what does it. And that's what's happened in the Twin Cities and all this stuff. It happened with George Floyd, happened with all of this. It's the trauma is there, and that triggers the love that we are and protecting other people and making sure we're all right. That's all I gotta say. I
Okay.
love
Thank you,
you all.
Stu.
I
Thank
love
you.
you all.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Craig, I'm sorry, the question you
Yeah,
asked.
what I noticed and a
Oh, the
meme out
churches.
there is that, you know, a lot of the elder church ladies really showed up.
Yeah.
That's a meme that gets put out there on social media. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, actually, for like the second Trump got elected, my wife and I both tried to go to as many protests as possible, small, this, that, but just to show resistance of some kind. And the disturbing part of it was an awful lot of people our age. I'm 70 and people my age and older and all of that. And like we kept thinking, where are the young people? And by the way, where are the artists? And we couldn't quite figure that out. So yes, there were a lot of older people and church folks and all of that. But what did happen is that during the surge also, that's when younger people, more diverse folks came forward too. So one of the things though in that I spent a lot of time I thought the contribution I could make was to help set a narrative that would allow more people who don't see themselves as trying to overthrow the government could come into it. So in my role leading the foundation, and former mayor, I don't think it's appropriate for me to have an opinion about everything, but I got much more active, and I actually got very active on Facebook and almost daily trying to craft the narrative about this is what Minnesotans do. There was a lot of nuance to it, but the reason I'm going into that is that many of the people who showed up would never, ever see themselves as a revolutionary or fighting back against their own government. But by creating this narrative about Minnesota exceptionalism and what we do, it became almost a cozy narrative. This is what we do as Minnesotans. We bring hot dish to neighbors. All of that. That did become very helpful to people who said, I'm not a revolutionary, I'm a Minnesotan. I just bought a hat. And it takes off on the Make America Great Again hat, and it says, Make America Minneapolis. And what's really great about that is that that's a sentiment that someone who would not see themselves as a protester can get their head around.
Amen.
And we're going to have to do that more to get more people out in the streets for what needs to happen now.
And so we were in the streets, 15 below zero. I remember you handing out leaflets on the way, and here we are. I don't know how many thousands, but many, many, many thousands marching. And I looked around, and there were youth. I mean, a lot of young people.
Yes.
A lot of people, and you couldn't tell because everybody's bundled up, right?
Yeah.
But it was a very, very diverse, and what you had to say was a real insight into that and how that came about. You mentioned the arts. I want to talk about people have heard about singing resistance, and there was a lot of social media about that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to share about that? And
Yeah, my wife became part of a small group, and there was one freezing cold night. I mean, they were all freezing cold, but this one was really, really cold. And down at our neighborhood commercial district, there were 15 people gathered, and my wife and I joined, and we sang that night. And it was sort of at the height of it, and man, I had nothing in the tank left, but I did after that. And I also, was in the fortunate position of leading a foundation that could do different things. So we funded a lot of art. Actually, I wasn't passing out leaflets, if I recall. I was passing out signs at a number of places.
That's right. I'm
Because
sorry. Yeah.
behind the
There were
scenes,
signs.
we
Yeah.
were printing a lot of signs and others done by artists. And then
Yeah.
there are many wonderful artists in this community, but one of them does gigantic uh, moving sculptures. And so he has a huge bear that goes out and a huge polar bear and others. So we funded them to go to some of the protests to try to create more of that vibe. And then they came back to us with a really extraordinary idea saying, um, he said, I want to create a human butterfly. Butterflies became a big part of the resistance. And so we funded this amazing thing. So you were there, Craig, at Powderhorn Park, which is sort of ground zero for a lot of this stuff.
Yes, it was.
And there were 1,000 people, I think it was 1,000
Yep.
people who all came together. The park has this sort of big bowl. And so down in the bowl were 1,000 people, each holding their one card. And the butterfly came together. And then in the center was a heart that emerged. It was stunning. And I want to fund recreating that again. But it was one of those things that was great. And when Renee Good died, Native communities came to us and said, can you fund a Native-led memorial? So there was a lot of art and culture built into that event, but it was really moving on many levels, including the fact that for a lot of people, me included, I am not used to the idea of the federal government attacking me and my people. But standing there in the frigid cold as Native folks were honoring Renee Good and her life, and they were basically teaching some of us white folk what it is like to have the federal government attacking you and your people. And I remember being stricken by that thought and being deeply comforted by that thought. A community that has suffered so much was holding the rest of us up. Native folks saying this is a way to be resilient through hideous injustice. And yeah, I'm sorry, I get kind of overwhelmed going back into all of that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got off track on that a little bit, but
No, that's real, RT. I mean, like you said, there's a lot going on. There was a lot
yeah.
of feelings. There still are a lot of feelings. Lisa is a union organizer in San Francisco and asked, what was labor's role? And
Quite a bit. This was very decentralized, and there were some tables. So there was one table that had a lot of organizers together. The head of the Central Labor Union was in it, the teachers union was in that, a few other unions were in that. So were some of the groups doing the trainings and others. So I went to a number of those at the Central Labor Union offices and stuff. Labor was very, very involved in this, also very involved in some of the humanitarian networks within the unions, especially. One of the things that emerged very, very quickly was food, but coming quickly after that was housing, and unions were one of the many players in that. Housing, because if you can't go to work, you can't pay the rent, you can't pay your mortgage. And so then how do we keep people in their homes? And so there was all sorts of work being done on that. And a lot of the unions within their own selves did that. And then a lot of us were contributing to efforts like that. Our foundation essentially put out $11 million on different forms of emergency housing, food. We're now deeply involved in doing small loans to small businesses to keep them afloat and all of that. And a lot of people were a part of that, but unions played and continue to play a big role.
May Day. On May Day, I went to the May Day March, and that was organized by four distinct, maybe I think three unions, but and it was powerful.
Yeah.
And what I noticed, Lisa, in that particular action was the difference, how it shifted from the reaction during George Floyd, and it was how could I say, much more emotional feelings, people sharing this deep sense of love of the city, of neighborliness. I mean, that's what came out a lot. So thank you, RT.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Put them in the chat. We'll call them out, or you just have a question, that you're sitting on, please. I have I remember a lot of talk was the actions at the Whipple Federal Building.
Oh,
So they're still happening, by the way.
yeah.
And one of the things that really came up for me were the people that would meet the detainees
Hmm.
when they came out. And I was there one day, and there were maybe 1,000 people, and 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 they would let out these detainees, and they were met with blankets, and they were met with food, and they were brought back into the crowd, and people were singing, and
Yeah. That was really, really important work. And, I mean, it's absolutely totally freaking sick what has been done to people who have been wrongfully incarcerated, pulled off the streets, trapped into the middle of other communities and all that. That's hideous. It's bad enough to be dropped like they were back into the community, and having those welcomings take place was great. There was also one of my favorite protests there. This woman who runs Smitten Kitten, which is basically a sex shop, um, made a wonderful contribution to the people who were out at the Whipple building. Pardon my slightly off color thing, but I can't describe this otherwise. She gave them a large number of large rubber dildos, and that they attached to the cars of the ICE officers. And so visualize the ICE agents getting in and driving through a hostile crowd and on the outside of their cars, waving back and forth, and humor and absurdity actually are proven tools against authoritarian regimes. That if you constantly go to, oh, they are so powerful and they're doing this, this isn't me talking, this is me parroting other people who know this. You are going back into validating their authority when embarrassing them, humiliating them, making a joke out of them is also part of what has helped topple authoritarian regimes. And that's an important part of the work too. And by the way, we just needed that.
Yeah, it was a lot of humor, a
Yeah.
lot of humor. I loved how you pointed out the thing. I had no idea you were funding these things, RT. I mean, I had a feeling maybe that was happening, but this giant butterfly,
Yeah.
and it was asked, yes, if you Google butterfly Minnesota resistance, you're going to get it. And by the
Yeah.
way, it's one of the icons of the resistance here is the monarch butterfly. And that's what it was. It was a monarch butterfly. And they were all and still all over our city and a symbol of the resistance. And it's amazing that a symbol is a butterfly.
Well, and every spring, the monarch comes from Mexico to bring beauty to our community. And,
Exactly.
that's it. And, it is important to also, when you think about our community, this has been a humanitarian center for decades, many, many decades. And so we've had very successful waves of immigration, one after the other, after the other. So when Craig made that reference to neighbor, it is easier here to feel that it's your neighbor because it often is. And I was just meeting with a group from our sister city in Sweden, Uppsala, and was talking to them a bit about this. And I had been asked about 10 years ago to go to Stockholm to the people from the EU security wanted me to go there to talk about why Somalis were doing better here than in Sweden. And when they said better, they meant especially getting into the workforce and getting entrepreneurship. So I went to, it ain't perfect, but it was better than Stockholm. So I went to Stockholm and, it's a beautiful city. And I said, take me to where the Somalis are. And they got me in a car and we drove and drove and drove and drove and drove and drove and drove about 45, 50 minutes out of the city to a place with wonderful public housing and great childcare and all of that, but far, far away from everyone else. And I said to them, back in Minneapolis, St. Paul, if you go to Bade-Makaska, one of our most beautiful lakes at sunset, you see everyone in the community, especially Somalis, walking around it. They're our neighbors. So this incredibly generous country of Sweden and most European cities have very strong central cities, but they're very affluent. And we have a more natural mixing here. It ain't perfect here, believe me. But it was easier to see this as your neighbor. And there's the big sort of people talk a lot about now, Minneapolis, where neighboring is a verb. You have that dynamic, and you also have much of the community is one or two or at most three generations removed from rural communities. Huge talent shed drawing from all these small rural communities. So there's also this culture of small villages within the city too. So all of this, there's a lot of layers to all of it, but that would play a role too.
One of the excuses. Okay, Brad, why don't you bring your question forward if you wish?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, Mayor Ryback, and for sharing. And I was just connecting this to attorneys and the role of attorneys in preserving and advocating for the rule of law, even in the face of what may seem to be, phrased as or presented as legal actions, but which may be extra legal or illegal even. And what your observations were regarding the roles of attorneys in this type of situation.
Very early on, we started using the word illegal a lot because so much of it was illegal. I was at a meeting just yesterday of the leaders of different foundations in the community to help fund a reconciliation group. The state authorized the same, following the lead of Governor Pritzker in Illinois, to begin to catalog all of the legal abuses for the right time at which we can come back and have a reconciliation panel because we need to. And so all of that work started during the more overt resistance and continues to this day. A lot is being done on that. And I think the most important work will be now, between now and the end of the year, making sure we get all of this and all of the evidence we can so that when the climate is better, all of this can come out. So much is illegal right now. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that those who push back are the most successful in this climate. by the way, we got a $60 million grant from the Environmental
Uh-oh.
the Great Lakes state. Doge came in, they did a search on anything involving environmental justice and canceled the grant. So we were faced with, what do we do? So I had to go back to our board and say, we kind of want to sue the federal government. You know, you've got $1 billion foundation, you got all this stuff. Grudgingly, the board went along. We sued and we won. And they're challenging, and we're going to stay in it. And I'm part of an effort. We raised $1 million for a community foundation defense fund, and there's something very powerful called Unite and Advance, where the largest foundations in the country were threatened for funding DEI, larger, much larger than ours, Ford, MacArthur, McKnight, et cetera. They formed something called Unite and Advance. I'm on the steering committee of that, and we're holding the funds for that. They're funding, doing a number of things, but funding 34 different lawsuits. So the role of the law right now is really important. And I think one of the things as a non-lawyer in this crowd, we need to think about is, where will the puck be? The very complex legal moment we're in with the Supreme Court that I think is wildly rogue and political. The highest court in the land, I think, right now is illegal. I'm not the lawyer on the call, but we
Amen.
need to gather all of this, not only for the moment, but also for the moment when justice is again central to this country. It is not right now to the degree that I see it, and I sure as hell know that a lot of people were pulled off the streets here who were not. The data is clear, and there was another, I don't have the numbers at the top of my head. There was a good article this morning about it. This was a wildly illegal action that was taken by any measure, and there will have to be an accounting for this, and there will be, you know, sorry to go off on that, but the fact that this was allowed to happen boils my blood. And more important, it's illegal. And so I was deeply upset about law firms allowing themselves to be triangulated. And for instance, with this Unite and Advance coalition of these large foundations, we're not doing any legal work through any of the firms that capitulated. And by the way, the ones that capitulated are the ones who lost clients, lost workforce and all that. Good.
Yeah. So we've got 15 minutes. And one of the things that we do on these calls is really open up the community circle and hear from people. So it's not just a one way. So I'd like to open it up right now. If you've got comments, reflections, things that you'd like to share that are brief. Stu, let me finish, Stu. Thank you. And so if you'd like to, please come off mute, and love to hear your voices. And what are you hearing from RT? What are you hearing? What's stirring for you? What are some thoughts or feelings that are coming up? So we'll just pause a minute, and would anyone like to begin? Stu, we heard from you, so I'm going to Bruce.
I heard something from you a couple times, RT, that I really haven't thought too much about before, which is reconciliation and the importance. I've been involved with restorative justice work for a long time and know the power and the healing of it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard it applied in this context so much. Maybe you can be a little more specific about, are you envisioning, South African Truth and Reconciliation proceedings with ICE agents? And when would that happen? It'd have to be at a time when the Democratic administration is back in power. How do you see that happening?
Well, first off, there's an official process, and the Advocates for Human Rights is leading it. And it's sanctioned by the state without funding, by the way, which is why the foundations were involved. But that process is to collect this information and to use it in a legal way. That, as you know, restorative justice is different than a court of law. And so I would love to see that, because having seen masked people taking children from their parents and parents from their children, I'd love to look in the eye of someone and know that. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I think that would mean a lot. At the end of the day, um, there are human interactions that need to be repaired. Why did that ICE agent do that to someone? I do think reconciliation would be a little more complicated in this moment, because the hate was centered at the top leader of our country. So how do you ever get reconciliation there? Was an ICE agent following orders? Was an ICE agent unemployed and got the job they could take? Or did they get off on this stuff? And I really want our community to get reconciled with that. I don't know how that will happen. I think it needs to happen. I don't know how it will happen.
Let me just add one thought that I've seen from restorative justice work, which is, we think a lot about the healing of the victim. But the fact of the matter is, people who do bad things, they're traumatized too.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll bet ICE agents have wondered, what the hell was I doing?
Yeah.
Human beings aren't good or evil. They just wind up in situations that make
Right.
them worse or better. And I'll bet if there were ICE agents who had a chance to sit down and hear what they did to people, and also got a chance to explain what pressure they were under, their, team spirit and group think. I really like this idea, RT. Thank you for bringing it up.
Well, and thank you for volunteering to lead that and coming back to us with an idea on how to fund it, because I think it's great and it would be awesome to do that. No, seriously, I think it would really help. It doesn't have to be every ICE agent. Geez,
Yeah.
when George Floyd was murdered, I went to people I knew in the police force. The union was defending it. And I said, my God, this is wrong. And so two cops who I really admire tried to get others to sign a letter saying, we disagree with our union, this was wrong. 5 cops eventually sign it. One of them, however, is Mark Kluko. He's currently a deputy chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, and I'm damn proud of him for doing that. I'd love it if the whole force had done that, but knowing that someone did that helped, so come back to us if you get an idea, because I would love to help.
Thank you. Martha, you're on mute.
Yeah.
And you're there. You're still on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
I'm kind of on the other side of that. I'm hoping for a proceeding at The Hague, but and that wasn't my question. My question is, I have a twin sister who lives in Minneapolis and was in all of the maybe you may have seen her at some of the protests, but she tells me that this is still happening, that they're still going on. So my question is that what is happening there still? Because the country thinks it's over, I think.
It's definitely not over, and it's not over here, and it's really not over in places like, for instance, Memphis right now. I mean, on some level, ICE was absolutely stupid to do this the way they did it. I sort of likened it to during the Revolutionary War. Remember your history books about the redcoats marching in formation, and the people from the Americas were up in the trees, and and you bring it to Vietnam, and guerrilla warfare always beats the others. ICE was violent and violating, but they were sitting ducks, because we could come at them from all different angles on that. And so I don't know. I think that's an element of this, but I don't know whether I'm getting at what you're.
Well, let me
Go
jump
further
in
with it.
here. I happen to be delivering food to two families, as I have since February, and driving kids to school back and forth. And for them, it's not over. For them, they're still afraid to get on a public bus. They're still afraid to come out of their homes. There's still raids happening. They're much more nuanced. It's happening out in the suburbs and greater Minnesota and places like Austin where there's, yeah, I mean, so it is happening, but not the way it was.
Tyler wants to talk.
Twyla, how about you?
Unmute.
You're on mute, Twyla.
There.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say I've done work in restorative justice and I'm really interested in the reconciliation that y'all are talking about. And Bruce, let's talk about that after this sometime. I'll call you.
Great.
Hey, no.
Hans.
Hi. I just want to say two things. One, together with Peter, actually, Peter Gable, we started.
Maybe introduce yourself briefly, since you came on afterwards. So
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed.
that's
the
okay. That's
beginning.
okay.
So I am a friend of Lisa's. I was a roommate with Peter Gable. I'm now I live in San Francisco. I'm from Germany, and I started during actually the South Africa period with Truth and Reconciliation.
Oh, okay.
Started an institute on models of reconciliation because and we did research because this is not the first time this has happened. And normally it gets buried, but there's thousands of years of history of successful or non-successful reconciliation.
Yeah.
And as much as the United States is the greatest country in the world, we're not the only country.
Yeah.
And our century is not the only century. So it is really useful, and we investigated the parallels. One of the things that I just wanted to say, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to reconcile while the fighting is going on.
Mm.
So this is one of the things that we really need to pay attention to. The other thing is that one of the biggest things for reconciliation was, or two of the biggest things is, one is there is a greater enemy that helps. The other one is economics. So these are just, lessons of the past. The second point I wanted to make was that there are a number of organizations, and we had two of them speak at our town square a little bit on tracking infractions, especially in the legal community. So going after lawyers who are breaking the law or the ethics of the legal profession and getting them disbarred or putting them in jail afterwards, which is not reconciliation. Part of reconciliation is to go after the people that you don't want to reconcile or that cannot reconcile. These two things go in parallel, and we have to watch out for the emotional aspect of it because it's all about the future.
Thank you.
What was done was done. We cannot change the past by being angry. So it's something that is really important. Thanks.
I just love all of that. And I love the capacity on this call for the reconciliation part. And just on the history thing, I'm reading Marco Polo's book about Marco Polo right now. And you can't think of a more violent group than the Mongols. But the difference in Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan really shows that it's one of zillions of examples of how even the most violent people can come into a community and begin to have an asset understanding and try to make things right. So, hey, I love where this is going.
Thank you. We've got a few minutes, and Stu, thank you for waiting. I know you had your hand up. So, Stu.
I was just noticing that, when we talk about law, that many of our lawyers are having clients to say, we say to them, what do you want us to do? How do you want us to change the world? Do you want 2 + 2 to be 5? Give me a retainer. I'll see what I can do. We have to keep that in mind too, that a lot of our lawyers are shape shifters.
Mhm.
And that's what the Supreme Court is doing, trying to shift our world into one where there's no disparity. It's all white. And they're trying to and unfortunately they have such a position right now. We have to do something about that. But anyway, I'm saying
Thank
that
you, sir.
we think that law is a default. Law is a default. Love is broader than law.
Yeah.
Law is often there to protect people from the people who don't want regulation.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you,
why people
Stu.
go 90 miles an hour in the car. If we didn't have speed limits,
Right.
we'd all be killed.
Yeah.
Well, we need some gun laws too, because if you read the simple words of the Second Amendment, it's only for a regulated militia.
Right.
Stu, I'm gonna thank you very much. I'm
Amen.
gonna ask Lisa to
I
close
love
us
you all.
out.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're on
You're on
mute,
mute,
Lisa.
Lisa. There you go.
Got to use my own hand instead of that little icon.
Yeah.
Well, for starters, I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry I don't know your first name.
Oh, I just go by RT.
RT.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, how the hell did you get the money together so quickly? It sounds like something would happen and you'd have zillions of dollars overnight.
Well, not exactly, but we're a foundation that has discretionary dollars, but we're
I
a
see.
community
Oh, I see.
foundation, so we have fund holders.
Got it.
And in a couple of cases, like after Alex Petty was murdered, I got on the phone and just said to a few business leaders, "You're too much on the sidelines," and we raised money. The food critic for the city magazine started something to help restaurants. We took that and amplified it.
I see.
But what really happened was all of these individual food networks and security networks and all of that were funded at a very grassroots level. So the foundations were very involved, no doubt. But people just dug in and gave time and money.
Mhm. Beautiful.
So I want
The
to
reason
be
I-
respectful to our time.
Can I
Thank
make
you.
one point? I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead, Lisa.
because it was connected to that, which is that Heino and I started an organization called Town Square Democracy in response to the creeping into our country, the signs of dictatorship. We were dealing with something called sliding into dictatorship, and since then Heino has started a campaign to send postcards to thank legal practitioners and any other groups like foundations who are standing up to Trump, and despite being threatened themselves and their families being threatened. We'd like to thank the foundations and the legal practitioners who did the work you're talking about, because we'd like to send them some postcards. It sounds like
I'm going to look into Times Square Democracy for several reasons, including I absolutely love the name of it. And we're going to do a large convening in the fall, kind of on this. And we're trying to figure out, do we say democracy? Do we say we're neighboring as a verb? We're not sure what to call it, but I'm sure liking Town Square Democracy.
Heino's showing you one of the postcards.
I know,
that-
I see that. And I'm going to, what's your web address? townsquaredemocracy.org, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, Bruce is the one who said that receiving a postcard is actually a nice thing for a judge when they're doing something scary.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
And PISLAP has been, and Lisa and PISLAP has been doing that since the beginning. Lots going on. So I want to be respectful for our time, for our tea's time, and we're at our close. And I want to ask Bruce to talk a little bit more about our retreat.
I'm
And
going to have to run into a meeting, so can I
great.
hop off? Thank
So
you.
thank you, RT.
Thank you.
Keep
All right,
up the
you so
great work,
much.
you guys. You're doing
Thank you
I
awesome.
so
have to
much.
run
Thank
too. I
you,
have to
Artie.
run too. I'm sorry. Bye.
Thank you.
So quickly, Bruce.
Well, I just thought this was a wonderful preview of what I hope happens at our retreat, where we will have several people who were intimately involved, like RT.
And maybe even RT. I'm working on them.
I thought he said he just was his schedule.
I
Anyway,
know.
that'd be great. But people who are intimately involved in the organizing and strategizing, and that will be able to spend some time with us in a little more relaxed setting and brainstorm and see how it happened here and how we can incorporate that not only into our organizing but into our lives. How do we practice differently? How do we practice with more love, Stu? Now that we've seen how people do it.
I got ways to do it.
Okay. So if you haven't, I know a number of the people on this call are coming to the retreat. If you haven't signed up, you can contact, I guess Nanette's on, well, contact PISLAP. We'll get you here.
Great. So thank you, everybody. And hope to see you in October in Minneapolis. And in the meantime, every month we'll be doing a community call like this. And so be on the lookout. And if you're not a member, and I heard a couple people say, I don't even know if I'm a member. Well, we would love to have you all as members, paid members, and it's not much. It starts at $50. But you know what? There's a lot going on, so would appreciate it if you could give more. Okay, in closing, thank you again. See you next month.
Love you all.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Fantastic meeting.
Good.
Yeah. Craig, may I ask you a question about the conference? Well, do you know when the Minneapolis panel is going to take place? Because I have
Saturday morning.
Morning, great.
And it will be, we're negotiating time. Given how important I think it will be and why people are coming, so we're still looking at design and people who are interested. And I think, we're trying to bring together people who are on the street.
Yeah.
RT is unique because he was, up there watching from, being able to give a whole lot of money. I mean, he gave a lot of money. And he was also in the streets.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
I
said that in your-
wasn't kidding. I
When
mean,
you
I'd
gave that
show
little-
up and he was everywhere. And he wasn't preening and, nobody would know who the hell he was. I did because I've
Was
known
he
him a
the
long.
immediately previous mayor?
No,
Oh,
no, he was a mayor. He was not a mayor during the murder of George Floyd.
yeah, that was Fry. Oh no, Fry wasn't either. He was on the board.
No,
Yeah.
Fry was a member.
Fry's on the board.
Fry's been a mayor since the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah, he came on. Yeah.
Man, has he gone through? I mean,
I know.
wow.
I don't know if this was mentioned before I got on, but the other outrageous thing was when they told Minneapolis they could not try the murders of the two people, that only the Department of Justice could do so.
Well, we've gone ahead anyway.
I was going to say I would have done a mock trial. You did go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh no.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary Moriarty is doing everything that can
yeah.
be done.
Yeah, Moriarty and the Attorney General of
I love the Attorney
bringing
General.
suit.
He's so great. Okay,
Gotta
bye.
go.
Thank
See,
you.
we'll see you both here in
Thank you
October.
so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Twilight.
Fantastic call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.